Hello and welcome to the Sprint 44 review. The sprint just ended Monday, August 1st. Normal 3-week sprint, no holidays in between that I'm aware of. Next slide, please. So as usual, I'll go over the sprint statistics. Carol will give us an update on the community, Gregg B on the providers, Dan will update us on the UI, Gregg T on the platform, Alberto will give us an overview of the REST API, Gregg M on the automate side, Dennis on performance, and Dave Johnson on the quality of the aspect. Next slide, please. Next slide. Cool. So the sprint main repo, we had 345 pull requests merged. 86 were enhancements, 130 were bugs, 40 refactoring, and 33 tech debt. There's 20 others, not sure what those are. But it's a pretty typical and good mix, I think. Next slide. Okay, so the split by category, by area was 136 in the UI, 104 on the providers, 36 on the core, 20 on automate, and 21 on API, and some of the other ones are 10 or lower. On the providers, 31 were in containers, 13 in Hawkular, 9 is it in OpenStack, and a good sprinkling everywhere else. Azure had 7, Ansible Tower had 7, so that's cool. So well spread out, which is what I like to see. Next slide, please. Okay, so this seems to be our second best sprint in terms of pull requests merged. So gaining some velocity, which is cool. As you can see, the blue box is getting bigger, which is a good indication, because we're in the midst here of working on the next release. And I'm kind of hoping that that blue section is going to keep growing until we get towards the end of the release, and then it'll start shrinking again as we focus on stabilization. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a little bit of an eye chart, but it's cool. So this is all the repos that were updated by the ManageIQ project over the last 3 weeks. So as you can see, the top one is ManageIQ, which is the one we focused on. But there were also many others. The integration test that Dave Johnson his team runs, that had 52 pull requests merged. The self-service had 15. ManageIQ, the website, had 8. RAP and API, which is I think a part of the integration test, that had 7, and really kind of a good mix of everything else: Foreman, the bot, documentation, the API client. So one of the things that kind of happened this past sprint is that we finally have in the ManageIQ docs repo, one of those 5 pull requests that were merged was actually an update of all of the documentation that we've had in Cloud Forms. We've moved it up to ManageIQ, and we're actually going to start addressing it and adjusting it so that it's upstream only, and the downstream will be built off of this going forward. So the idea is that everyone can start adding and updating and improving the upstream documentation, and we can start moving forward there, because we've never really had upstream documentation before, only on the API part, I think. So that's that. So next slide, please. Okay, I'll turn it over to Carol.
Hi, Carol here. Thanks, Oleg. So for the community side, yeah, last week we had quite a few blog posts. One of them is the recap for the ManageIQ Design Summit. So you can find all the videos, recordings of the sessions, demo videos, the slides, some pictures, and so on. And in the blog, the link is there. And the next thing is pretty exciting. We started a new blog series called Last Week in ManageIQ, where we pick, feature some interesting pull requests and highlight them on a weekly basis. So we already have 2 blog posts out last week and this week. So and I think so far the feedback has been really positive. Feel free to take a look if you haven't already. The links are there. Following that, work is ongoing for the renewal of the website, manageiq.org. We're kind of laying the groundwork at the moment, getting all the, putting together the designs, making sure we make the right hosting decision and so on. So hopefully in the next couple of sprints, we'll have something more to show, to demo during the sprint reviews. But right now, just so you know, there's stuff ongoing. As for events, well, again, it's something I just kind of started doing. I'm looking into different events that maybe we can have a ManageIQ presence, like, FOSDEM, DEF CON. If you have any ideas or suggestions, please let me know. Ping me on Twitter, on Gitter or via email, whatever is convenient. All right, that's all from me. Thank you. Next slide, please.
All right, over to Gregg B. Gregg, you there?
Now you can hear me.
Yep, now we can.
Microphone issue. So, I was on vacation actually through most of Sprint 44, and I can't say how amazing it is to come back and see how many awesome things happened while I was gone. Maybe I should be out more. For Sprint 44, I'll talk about some of the highlights from Azure, container integration team, Google Cloud, and the Rev integration team. Some of you might notice there's a new icon there. I'll leave that as a little surprise for later. I'll also add some updates about VMware, and also there's a little surprise hidden there too. Then I'll hand it over to Alyssa, talk about Hawkular and middleware. And finally, I'll talk about some of the core pluggability work that's going on. Next slide. So this sprint, I pulled one major highlight from several different providers. This shouldn't imply that this is all the work from these providers. Each provider had several bug fixes and small updates to other features. These are just some of the things that I thought really illustrated the effort and exemplify what's important to the ManageIQ project. First off, Brona added support for floating IPs during Azure instance provisioning. This shows some of the fine-tuning the team is putting in to support Azure. Both Brona and Dan have done amazing work getting the Azure provider up to the point of being a first-class provider in ManageIQ. Then the container integration team added cross-linking of container nodes to OpenStack instances, and by now everyone knows my rant about the fully connected view of the environment and how important it is to the ManageIQ project as a whole. And this is just another step in that direction and really, really exciting to me. I should also point out there were over, as Oleg showed, there were over 30 PRs merged from the containers team, so really great work. Next, our friend Joe over at Google added support for metrics collection for Google Cloud. This is a huge milestone in making Google Cloud another first-class provider in ManageIQ, so thanks a lot, Joe. And the Rev team has added support for version 4 of the Rev API. And I don't often call out API version changes, but this is an important milestone for us, I think, because it marks when the Rev team is taking ownership of the API that ManageIQ uses to talk to Rev. And historically, ManageIQ has used this homegrown and self-maintained API. And with this step, the Rev team is taking just one more element of the Rev provider under their umbrella. So thanks everyone to that team. Next slide. So surprise, the secret new icon is for Nuage networks. A team of Nuage developers has been working with Ladislav to create a Nuage cloud network provider in ManageIQ. And Sprint 44 saw their first pull request. Wow, their first pull request merged, which adds modeling and inventory support for Nuage cloud networks. So thanks, huge thanks goes out to the Nuage team and to Ladislav for helping guide them through a lot of that. Next slide. On the VMware vSphere front, Adam and James have been working on adding storage profiles. They've added modeling and inventory collection. And we might even see a demo next sprint. Maybe you guys heard that bus rolling over you. Next slide. So here's another surprise. Adam has been working with a team from XLab to add support for VMware vCloud. The XLab team has added support for the cloud provider authentication inventory collection, which includes vApps. And in this case, vApps are handled like orchestration templates. I've seen a little preview of some features in a video that the XLab team has put together. We're going to hold off for Sprint 45 because it contains some features that are still being worked on. But it looks really good, and we'll share it with you next sprint. So now over to Alyssa to talk about Hawkular. Next slide.
Hi, everyone. So this sprint, we had several new features. I'll start with new operations on deployment entities. We have add new deployment with a whole new dialog or wizard, if you like. We have start-stop deployments operations. Performance supports were added for data sources, as well as some more metrics are collected for data sources and reported in ManageIQ via the live metrics mechanism. Various topics around upgrade of the Hawkular gem to 2.3.0 version. Skipping unreachable middleware providers when reporting, which is very important in middleware case because the reporting is also done with the help of live metrics mechanism and not from the metrics that are stored in the ManageIQ database. There is a rechecking authentication status functionality added to be aligned with all the rest of the providers that have the functionality. And as always, we fixed multiple bugs. Thank you. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Alyssa. So on to what the core team has been doing with pluggability. One of the main themes for pluggability is this concept of ask, don't assume. And it's one of the things I talked about during the ManageIQ Summit. In that vein, Marcel, James, Julian, and our intern Gaurav have been working on replacing some of this old assumption code with the supports feature mix-in, and I've listed some of the examples here of what's been put in place for this sprint. I'll say this over and over, I'm sure, but there's still tons of work to do in the pluggability space, but we continue to chip away at it. Thanks everyone to the core providers team and to all of our partners for so many great contributions. And over to Dan to talk about UI.
All right, so as usual, a little summary of the PRs, UI PRs that have been merged. Some significant work in the self-service UI. I think a lot of that was dealing with the national internationalization changes that we made there. Quite a few bugs, and if you notice that a bulk of those bugs were backported to Darga, so it should be a lot of fixes coming in that new release that's about to come out. As far as refactoring, ongoing work with the tree builder, another 6, I think, trees got converted. It's going pretty well. Got a few people working on it. We're doing some refactoring in the quad icon area. Martin has been chipping away at the removing the RJS. So the Explorer presenter got merged in, and that is a significant chunk of the actual remote JavaScript stuff that we're trying to get rid of. And code mirror version was updated, caused a bug for one day, and then we fixed that, so we're okay. Next slide. On the enhancement side, both of the UIs, self-service and the operations UI, have been updated to the latest Patternfly and Angular Patternfly. We really needed to do that to start taking advantage of some of the latest components in Patternfly and some of the technologies they're using there. The self-service UI language selections have been separated from the operations UI, and that's really because the translation tables and such are way smaller because the self-service UI is relatively new and has so few screens. So that can move faster. So there's no reason for them to be tied together. So now we can put out different languages for self-service faster. Continuous work on internationalization, virtual columns, toolbars all got changed so they can take advantage. And then also removed string interpolation for better localization. Greg B, that's one for you to say 3 times fast. Also changed internationalization to use the get tax pluralization. That helps with being able to substitute basically make sure that the languages can have their own localization of certain strings. So it's not just substituting strings in or values into strings. Ansible Tower jobs got moved to the configuration tab. They were buried in clouds and stacks and mixed in with some other stuff, so separated those out. And we have interactivity added to the C3 charts. This is something we've had on downstream a long time ago, but with the charting technology changing, it was tough to get that back into the product or into the project. So we've got that back in now, and we have a demo of that. So next slide. All right, so pretty simple. Added another tab under configuration called jobs, and if you click on that, you get the list of the Ansible Tower jobs. Next slide. You can, of course, drill in, get the summary screen, and then do operations. There's a sample there, such as tagging on the Ansible Tower jobs. All right, next slide. All right, so we have a demo of the interactivity. This was created by Robin and Bruno. I'm going to try to play it and talk through it, and hopefully it goes as well as it did when I was practicing. So here we go. Let's see, share screen. All righty. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. All right, so of course this is Robin's machine. He's got all the nice new charts on his dashboard. And we went through those last time on the last sprint demo. So let me hit play and see what we got here. All right, so we're going to start off in infrastructure at the cluster level because the clusters have hosts and hosts have VMs. And so show you how you can drill through the charts. So picking a certain cluster that actually has cap and U data. We get down in here and you can see you go to the monitoring tab and hit utilization, bring up the cap and U charts. These charts are done live. They're not stored, so they're actually generated from the latest configuration, cap and U data. You can see all the new charts there. So we also added was a zoom feature. So we had that before. So now we have the zoom feature. You can actually bring up the chart and see all the data that created the chart. So that's pretty cool. It's really nice to be able to actually look in closer to the data and actually see what's behind it. And there's the sample of the pop-up menus. We're going to drill in actually on the smaller one. So I think he's going to unzoom here back to the other charts. All right, now let's see if I can follow this. Okay, so what we're doing is you're showing the values, for each chart line. There's the actual menus that you can choose. All right, so we're saying here, let's see the hosts that we're running on this cluster at that point in time. Okay, so at that point in time, there were 2 hosts running, so maybe you want to see a little more detail of those. You can then drill into that. Now you see the summary screen for that host. Oh, let's go look at, the utilization for that host, because perhaps that host was, high CPU or something at that point in time. You're trying to figure out a problem, right? So now we can see the actual cap and U for that particular host, and we're still following the same time. Within that, we can keep drilling. And we want to see, I think it's going to choose, we want to see the top VMs running during that hour. So we want to see which VMs were actually, causing the high CPU. We get in there, we're going to see actual pie charts with, different VMs listed. You can, hover over those, get the details. Right, from there you can drill in again. Actually, trying to figure out where you go. Okay, so drill into the hours and actually see the actual usage for that VM over that particular hour. All right, so now you're down to the VM level, seeing what he's been doing hourly for that day. You could see hourly events to see if anything weird was happening. In this case, there were no events for that guy. Right, and that's it. So this is like a capability we had a while back, and we've resurrected it. And now on the ManageIQ project upstream, you can drill to your heart's consent through all these different charts. That's it for the UI. Take it back, Marianne.
Very cool. All right, over to GT.
Okay, so on the platform side, touched a bunch of different areas. Nick, with the help of Yuri and Joe V, started putting in place a lot of the building blocks, foundational stuff for high availability for Postgres. We have ongoing work in tenancy. Talk a little bit about replication as well as always. And then there's some additional things that I'll call out as far as enhancements and bug fixes. And then Alberto will take care of the rest. Next slide, please. So actually, I will let Nick talk about this slide in the next one. He's the lead on all the work for high availability.
All right, so this sprint we started work on putting in product high availability solution for Postgres. So we're using a package called Rep Manager. Some links there. Open source from Second Quadrant, same company that built PG Logical. It allows for both administration of Postgres replication and for automated failover. So that makes our lives easier. We had to build that package and install it for our very specific flavor of Postgres. So that's all there and installed on the appliance. Yuri has also been working on maintaining a list of the standby database servers on the file system. So when the database goes down, we know what our options are for a new database to start pulling from. And then there's work in progress from Joe, working on actually...
Oops, back one slide.
There we go. So last bullet still.
Yeah.
Work in progress from Joe for actually initializing a new standby server using the appliance console. So that'll be the workflow for that. Next slide. Also, as a part of this, some refactoring, there was a Postgres DSN parser that was written for some other things that became useful when doing some of the high availability stuff, and it made sense to pull this out into a gem. So this is a new gem under the ManageIQ organization. Next slide.
Okay, thanks, Nick. So on the tenancy side, I figured I'd call out the first bullet here because LJ and Chris Arkan are both heads down working really hard on doing the low-level work for supporting sharing resources. We don't have any PRs yet for this, but probably in the next sprint. But I just wanted to point out that the work that they're doing because they're into RBAC and roles and things like that in order to be able to support having multiple entitlements and doing the right thing as far as merging them. Also, Libor is working on doing the mapping of OpenStack tenants to ManageIQ tenants, and one of the first steps to that was that he needed to add the parent ID, that's the OpenStack parent ID, to our existing cloud tenant model so that we can get the hierarchy of tenants in OpenStack on our side in a database, and then we can use that to map to our tenants. So that'll be the next step for that. Okay, next slide. Yeah. What more can I say? So Nick has basically removed all traces of RubyRep from the application. In fact, if anybody comes across any other places where it's referenced, I want to know right away so we can get rid of it. So yeah, so RubyRep is gone. Kind of happy about that. Looking forward to success with PG logical replication, even though we're still supporting the old replication in prior versions. Next slide, please. So some additional things. Worked with Tim on updating the watermark reports. I know this bullet is hard to understand. I'll try and explain it. But basically, the first version of the watermark reports were taking the maximum daily average value as opposed to the maximum daily maximum value for the day. And these are monthly reports. So that's a fix that we made. It was actually more work than that bullet appears to be for that. And LJ was a nice guy, and he added back the nice values to the worker processes. We actually kind of lost them when he switched over to doing the forking workers because the nice values originally set on the command line. So he created a PR to actually update the nice values after the workers got forked. And this one, I figured I'd call out too. Jovi ended up removing a change that we had made to do hourly checking of log growth and then rotate if like an interim rotation, not on the day boundary, if the size of the logs grew over 1 gigabyte. That was to prevent using up all the disk space for logging. But in having discussions with support, we decided to roll that back because that would basically could cut into the 14 days of logging that they need. And they actually need as much as they can get, even more than 14 days. So there's a bunch of work that's planned going forward to do some other things to prevent the log volume from growing and running out of space. And Tim, while not working on API stuff, continues to move forward with refactoring and cleanup of expressions. So he got a couple PRs in there to clean up code that deals with relative dates and times. And I think that's it for the platform. I'll turn it over to Alberto.
Next week.
Yep.
Alrighty, so in the API land, we've continued refactoring this stuff here. So Tim and Shimon have been busy with that. So as you can see, some of the work done here with the new collection config, additional help for running in tests, and then leveraging some of the new parsed body in the responses, and a lot of work also on clarifying, making sure the expectations are easy to understand in the RSpecs. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things we've added is a new option in the API.YAML for arbitrary resource path. Because not every collection has a strict collection ID, sub-collection ID. So things like API settings and the upcoming API automate, where they have arbitrary starting points for resources. So that's necessary for that. Next slide, please. Okay, so Jason and I kind of started the ManageIQ API client. This is far from done, but at least we have a good starting point. So the signature for the new API client, the new GitHub location. So far, we have the good foundation got merged in, kind of listed here. Some of the stuff down there, but there's still quite a bit of work to do. I mean, there are a lot of issues, but it's at least starting to move. So not prime time yet, but it's starting. So next slide, please. Okay. So we had quite a few enhancements by Jillian. So in here, she's added the new arbitration profiles collection, as shown here, and we have the full CRUD on that. So to get the posts, some example shown here, as well as editing, deleting individual resources or multiple in batch. So standard signatures for us. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the enhancements we did for the API users that was needed for updating settings from the SSUI. So you can now update actually not only the settings but the email address. That was a gap between us and the classic UI. But with the settings, you can update that attribute for yourself, the user himself. You cannot update some other people's settings. But when you get the API entry points, the settings which only had the locale before, we also merged in the whole settings for that user. So anything changed there would be returned. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, another enhancement by Jillian, the arbitration settings, new collection entry points, and again, she's implemented the full CRUD for that. So get the posts, an example here, and explaining for a new arbitration settings and the standards, edits and deletes made available. Next slide, please. And yep, another enhancement by Jillian, exposing the cloud networks. That's read-only. So it's API cloud networks, also made available as a formal sub-collection of providers. And down here are some of the examples to query all of them, an individual one, or the cloud networks of a particular provider, individual one of that, and another example expanding security groups of that. And I believe that's it. Next slide. Move to Gregg again.
Yep. All right. So in Automate, one of the things we did, this is kind of a quality of life update for people that are admins around Automate. Is on the simulate screen, often the defaults were just not what people used, and so we changed those. The entry point now points to system process request, and the execute method is on by default. And then one of the issues we had around in the object attribute area was that there was no filtering at all. So if you had tenancy set up and you were an admin within a tenant, you still had access to every object in the system. So we got RBAC filtering applied there as well. And I'll say there's a PR that just missed this sprint, but we'll retain these values. So if you navigate away from this screen and come back, which is a common thing when you're kind of working in this area, go and tweak some Automate methods, come back, you would lose these properties every time and you'd have to re-enter everything. So now we're capturing that stuff, so that makes that a lot easier. Next slide, please. So for the VM provisioning, on the infrastructure side, we just added some new memory values in there. That stuff hasn't been touched in a long time. I think the max was 8, but they're configurable, so you can always add them. But we just bumped up, added 12, 16, 32 into the dialogues that we ship. And then for service provisioning, one of the things when we were asking around that people were using generic services to provision VMs through the automation create provision request layer, and we were trying to understand why people were using that technique and that workflow. One of the things that kept coming out was the ability to create a number of VMs within a single service item. So it was kind of a cart and horse a little bit of when that value got processed, say, in the dialogues and passed down to be processed was too late. So we got in and added some changes in there. So now I'll show on the next slide, but there's you can set it when you're setting the catalog item, as well as being able to set it in the dialogues, the service dialogues at the individual service level, or if you're doing bundled services. So, next slide. If you're familiar with the normal VM provisioning screens, that number of VMs count towards the bottom is always visible. It was hidden in services prior, so we've exposed it now. So here I'm editing one of the catalog items. I can change that value. And again, you can leave that at 1 and process that value through the service dialog. So hopefully that gets people a little bit, not having to use the generic service and then wire in all the other support they need to create the provisioning requests completely through Automate. Next slide. So last sprint, I talked about having the visibility flag on the dialog fields. So now that flag is exposed through Automate, so each field can be hidden within that view, depending on, here's just a simple script I use for doing a number of tests, but I have another drop down based on the value that that's set to. I can show or hide, the field, and hopefully that's useful to people. Next, please. All right, so this, we were added service models to expose the compliance and compliance details. I added the PR number there. If you need to take a look, and this description comes directly from it. I felt it was really explained it well, but allows for a number of use cases where it's beneficial to programmatically access the most recent compliance status for a resource and list the details of each condition tested. So this is really exposed on VM, template, and host. You can get to all the compliances or the last one, just really exposing the same model we have in the background, and then exposing the compliance and compliance details and their relationship. So that's in there now. Next. And then some work around generic objects, exposing those. So now the generic object and the definition are both exposed in Automate, and we have a PR for relationships, and we're working on the UI, or we'll be starting work on the UI, hopefully shortly, around getting the definitions created. And then also in this sprint, there were efforts that continued around pluggable providers, working on the service blueprints, and the Git automation domains in the back end is really close. So I'm hoping that gets merged in this sprint. Next slide.
Okay, for this sprint, I just wanted to call out a lot of the work behind the scenes that Keenan's been doing in CAP&U, focused primarily on scheduling metric collection. We've seen on larger scale deployments more often where we can't get the metrics collection scheduled in our timeout period, and memory utilization through the roof. So he's been working that last sprint and this sprint. The local test, we saw the scheduling time for a 10,000 VM environment. The test was 119 seconds down to 43 seconds to get the scheduling in, so that was a really good improvement. But it really hit home. We were able to look at a large environment that was having problems. Actually, they were unable to run CAP&U. The appliances were running out of memory, flowing through swap and becoming unresponsive. An update that was actually from the last sprint, was in the last sprint, got applied, and they began running that, and everything was fine after that. And the feedback was that after it was applied, zero swap used, and memory was less than half of what it was before, memory utilization. So we saw, the local test environment showed out the benefit, and then real life production was kind of a nice way to see it happen. Next slide.
Hey, how's it going? So Dave Johnson, Quality Engineering. This is our first time on the sprint demo. It's long overdue. So we should be a more visible presence kind of moving forward. After the ManageIQ Summit, we moved our integration tests and RAP and API project under the ManageIQ organization umbrella. So that's kind of moving forward. This is where we have created our test framework, which models the user interfaces of ManageIQ, as well as the models that and objects that we work with. Includes all the tests. Anybody could run this kind of if they wanted to. We're working on kind of fixing the documentation to just make it a little bit easier to consume. The Wrap and API project is basically ManageIQ Lite. It's a external project that the QE department has put together. So we can verify things that are going on the provider, basically using the provider APIs in a consistent manner as we execute ManageIQ functions. It used to be part of the integration test framework, but we externalized it so other teams, other upstream communities could use it that expressed interest. What's been going on this last sprint is a lot of bug verification, first off. We've been spending a lot of time kind of verifying that the fixes that are coming in work correctly. In addition, we've been working on our next iteration of the test automation framework that we have, which we are calling Framework 3.0, and is a branch on the integration test repo. Basically, we want to simplify the use, improve the API consistency within the framework itself, and we're looking at restructuring the tests around the available ManageIQ endpoints. So, you know, if it'll be the same test whether it's run against the web UI, REST, or database. You know, write once, run many times against the different endpoints. Along with that, we've been trying to fix some of the UI navigation code, just so it'll be easier to kind of maneuver around the different interfaces of the UI. In addition, a lot of work has been going on from the middleware QE team to add both support into the framework and test coverage. That effort's really gaining traction. We're seeing a lot of PRs getting merged from that team. In addition, Azure support, we continue to kind of chip away at the backlog that we have and getting supportability into the framework along with the appropriate test coverage for all the different features that we offer. And then a lot of just kind of various fixes to help test failures that we're seeing. Kind of moving forward, we hope to start to bring in a little bit more statistics around the automation runs themselves, you know, pass failure rates, and kind of some status on individual kind of features that are being worked on from the development team. That's all I got for today. Next slide.
Cool. So next demo is in 3 weeks, August 24th. Around that time, at that sprint demo, we will be talking about the Darga 3 release. That's kind of working towards right now. I'm kind of hoping that there's more news in about 3 weeks or so. And with that, I want to say thank you to everyone involved on all the pull requests from all the teams inside Red Hat and outside Red Hat. I just wanted to open it up for questions and comments. All right. Doesn't seem like there are that many. There are?
Question of what's an arbitration profile?
Yeah, Chris K., do you want to talk to that? People want to know what an arbitration profile is or an arbitration anything is. Chris, you on?
We used to get unmuted by.
I'm here. Sorry, my microphone was not cooperating. Sure. So the arbitration. Can you all hear me? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So the idea behind the arbitration profiles is to, as we expand out our arbitration engine, it allows you to have the system be able to specify one or more options for a cloud provider or infrastructure provider. And in order to focus people to have to do that. So for example, you could set an arbitration profile to just a single option of instance size equals, in the case of Amazon, M3 medium. And what you would then do in the arbitration rules, you would say, force all, non-production instances to this size. And you can continue with that pattern. Maybe you want to enforce certain VMs to go, type of VM to go to certain regions or zones. And it would allow you to kind of further expand on that as we get the rule engine working. So that's sorry?
Yep. No, thank you. Very cool. All right, anybody else with questions or comments? Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, and we'll see you all in 3 weeks.